am Punchihewa from Sri Lanka, and I have my own institute called Tizabi Institute, and that's my website. And my topic for you is management of cerana in its natural environment. Because as you see in my first page, the area, the cerana area is very clear to the right of the page, which includes all our countries in the wet, humid tropical zone of Asia. Cerana is the common honeybee of the region, and this is how cerana could be successfully managed in this region. And I come from, as you know, Sri Lanka is very similar in many ways to most of these countries, starting from Bangladesh all the way up to Indonesia and Thailand. We have very much very many things in common. One of the commonest things is the coconuts and the rice, and of course the hills are a bit different. So, and that's also common for the cerana. And our natural environment is this tropical humid environment. Can I move to the next slide, please? Commonly, cerana is kept in home gardens and very often in an earthenware pot. These pots are not specially made for the honeybees, but they are made as water pitchers, which are very common in this country. And they are a little bit broken, or there's a crack. They always hang this up in a tree, and the bees come and occupy in a few months. I mean, if this during the right season, or sometimes few weeks, or in a few days, depending on the season. And also sometimes people use kind of logs, and they are also quite acceptable to the bees. And they do a kind of a home garden beekeeping or bee having or rearing. It's not beekeeping as such. You really don't manage bees. You allow the bees to build up the honey, and at that point in time they break it up and extract the honey, which is quite sufficient for them to get a little honey. Perhaps it's very common with the Asian region that every culture in this region has their own indigenous medical system. At least in Sri Lanka, 80% of the prescriptions, which are again based on the local medicinal plants, so-called, 80% of the time, the other active ingredient in this concoction or the mixture of, the mixture of these various plant parts, it can be seeds, it can be leaves, it can be roots, it can be anything depending on the purpose you are using for. The honey comes so much so even in medical preparations for orthopedic or the broken bones. They use honey. And as you know, some of the very early travelers as far back in 16th century, they were quite astonished about especially the orthopedic treatment system based on local herbs. So obviously we had a long tradition of using indigenous plants, and part of the indigenous system is using honey. So this kind of a bee having in the home garden helps them to obtain about a liter or sometimes a little bit more of honey for their requirements, especially for as a feed for children and as an ingredient of medical system. But if you want to go a little bit further, you might have to one has to improve the system. So many organizations, government as well as non-organization, try to sell or sometimes even give free of charge hives to the beekeepers. And the hives are the regular movable hives, movable comb hives. But often they think it's just the way that they were managing bees earlier. I mean, having bees in their home garden, there is no management system as such. Therefore, when the honey flow, which is, I come to the next slide, which is sporadic and short-lived, suddenly the super gets filled up with honey because bees have no regular offering of honeycomb, so they just build it. And these combs are much thicker than regular combs. And in fact, cerana builds almost 200 millimeter thick combs per comb. And I think that's the maximum they go. And as you see, you have just a chock-a-block of honey. But, this is again, from the point of beekeeping, is not very useful because you can't extract the honey. You have to really take the combs out, and in a case like this, and squeeze it out, or filter it through some kind of a filtering device, like a net or something. And so then you lose a lot of honey because, as I say here, our honey flows are short-lived and sporadic. So there are so many honey flows during a year. If you break the combs, and if you then they have no other time to build combs to benefit from this short-lived sporadic honey flows. So that's a big disadvantage if they don't manage. And what we are trying to do is teach a system of management to beekeepers who have not been good at that traditionally. And as you see, the various plants which are extensively covering as a common plant, especially in the drier parts of the island. And when they come to flower, I mean, these flowers don't last for more than a week. And there's a lot of honey coming, and people should be able to benefit from it. So this is the explanation about it. And I'm trying to just summarize the areas I cover in this presentation. And so one of the things in management of honeybees is not just interfering with the colony, but just looking at the entrance of the colony at a safe distance, so that one can see how the bees behave without interfering with them. And as you know, cerana is a very shy bee. They don't like too much interference. We have devised a system where you simply watch the colony front, their entrance, and the bee behavior, the flight behavior at various times of the day changes. So this is called estimation of the colony performance index, just simply based on the relative pollen incoming rate. One of the important things, because the pollen incoming indicates the status of the colony. That's why I say the colony performance. So, and also one has to remember the cerana bee has a very short flight range, and high manipulation. What I mean is just building up the honey super or the honey box and swarm management. Those are the two important management things. Of course, then there is as usual, the pest and management, which I discuss here. The hornets, the weaver ants, and they are the natural pests. And wax moth is very common in the environment, but they become only a pest when the bees are weak. So which has to keep in mind. So it's up to the beekeeper not to make the colonies very weak in a sense. So there are no pest and diseases as such, but just now, by the last few years, we have seen a new brood disease coming, perhaps being introduced by somebody. And the way of management also discussed here. But most of the management things are very clearly expressed in my manual, which is available to all of us, all of you, free of charge. And I give the website address. All participants can download it and use it, and it's in English. So at least most of us, at least who are in of course, Asians don't use English as their common language. English is the language of the so-called elite, or if you are in a better position, and if you have some access to English education, I think you should So I trust all the NGOs, the government officials who are in the higher up, has some knowledge of Asia in English, because some of it the earlier British colonies were, as Malaysia, I think, at least the Philippines has a lot of interactions in the US, and Burma and all this, and also English is not too rare in even Thailand, but English, all these other countries, English is fairly common, so I think all can share. So this is how one is just examining the colony. You don't have to do anything, you simply have to wait, and I have given the time periods one has to watch, and then you can make a calculation. If you are used to watching this, you can do the calculation just by watching. You don't have to wait for a minute or two. You can wait a few minutes, and when the incoming rate is high enough, that it's a healthy colony. You don't have to worry about it. So just like, checking the temperature, and you can check there. And also, if you watch sometime in the afternoon, you can see the bees are fanning, and obviously they are in a warm climate, and this time of the day they don't gather pollen. They try to sort of ward off the heat. So ideal time to watch pollen is in the morning, say between 8 to 11 o'clock in the morning, early morning hours. So this is also a healthy colony. They want to keep off the warm daylight. So then there's another thing. If you watch them during the right period, that means the reproductive period, the first part of the reproduction is the production of drones, and then they go to the production of the females or the queens. So the drones become very frequent and available during the day, in the afternoon. When you watch hive entrance in the afternoon, say around 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, then you can see many drones flying in and out, and that's very easy to see. And also, the buzz they make, they are flying buzz of the sound, quite different to that of worker bees. So then these are warning signal for the beekeeper that he has to make preparations to divide the colonies and get the best advantage of the swarming period. And as you know, Apis cerana is notorious as a very difficult bee to manage. The norm used to be, at least as far as I am concerned, Apis cerana swarms during the good period and abscond or leave the hive during the bad period. And perhaps, I don't know, in this conference, anybody who attended the conference that was held in Malaysia in 1987. And it's well documented that cerana is a bee that had not been worked properly. And that's the time, I was still working on the basics of the cerana beekeeping. And I couldn't answer myself the problem of swarming and absconding. So all what I did was I was just looking very closely at this problem from many points of view, from the weather, the vegetation, how the bees behave, what's happening inside. So one has to be really closely watching. They're not difficult. Only thing is one has to be really, I would not say dedicated, but thoroughly interested, rather than just going at especially for, I'm telling this for government officials, they have certain working hours. No, the working hours will not tell you their bee working hours, because this happens very well after 3:30, but normally government officers or any organized institute will have to shut down their doors at 4 o'clock off over the river. Anyway, that's beside the point. The point is that if you watch them carefully during the day, just at the hive entrance, not very elaborately inside, and you can see what's happening. And also, cerana is very shy, or they don't like too much interference into their brood box, which, to me, almost like examining an animal after cutting the abdomen, which you normally don't do. So it's much better to observe things outside. And this is what it is. And when the drones appear, that's the critical time. The beekeeper has to take action. Now, before I come to that, I show you a well-managed honey box, which uses less combs than in the brood box. Now, in this hive, which we use as a standard hive in Sri Lanka, has 8-liter capacity in the brood box and has 8 combs. So if you really make measurements of the volume of the bee and the combs and all that, it comes, a comb is about 1 liter in size. You can make measurements. I mean, these are very, very simple. You only need a little ruler, perhaps with a millimeter scale, which is more accurate. But you manipulate in such a way, you make thicker, broader honeycombs in the supers or the honey boxes. So it's easy to manage and easy for the bees to feed it up, and easy in the process of extraction, which I'll get to that later. And yeah, and this is one of those young mothers working closely in our program. She will test our new technologies and find it very useful and easy for her. I emphasize very much on the mothers, because mothers need a lot of honey, especially to treat treat children. I mean, not that all children are sick, but very, very regularly, every 2-3 weeks, we give our children some kind of a mixture of medical plants, say the seeds or whatever. I mean, they're all crushed and made to a powder mixed with honey, say for various diseases that we suspect as a precautionary thing. And it's in our language, it's called khalka, or in English, I would translate as a paste of mixture of medicinal herbs. It can be a seed, it can be a bark, it can be a leaf, depending on the purpose we are using for. And often ginger, a very common plant in all our region, ginger, turmeric, and all these things are used in some quantities with honey to feed children, say early morning or after lunch or something, like a precautionary thing. So children will take it up very easy because it's coming with honey. And also they are medicine, especially against worms or various things. I mean, only mothers will know, and any I'm sure, yes, in fact, I know this lady. I'm not a lot of other ladies. Usually her mother stays with her and train the daughter how to raise her kids. So grandmother interactions is very important. And so when she becomes a grandmother, she knows how to tell her children. Anyway, this is just to tell you the quantities. And this earlier honey box I was showing, I just want to give you an impression about the weights. And my balance is not very, very heavy duty. It measures to a maximum of only 200 grams, 2,000 grams or 2 kilos. Now here already 5 honeycombs are reaching the maximum. And as you see, so these 5 combs are almost 2 kilos or 1,900 odd grams. And then the leftover one is left just outside, which I will weigh that later, and that comes through 311 grams. So I make a little calculation on the weights of the honey. So totally the weight of the honey is honeycombs, 2,214 grams, including the wax. And you can reduce 90 grams because each of these super frames, which again we conserve as much as wood possible. So the thickness of the frames on 3 sides is 5 millimeter, and the bottom member is only 3 millimeter thick. So we conserve wood as much as possible because Sri Lanka has a problem of our forestry, cutting down forest plants and things like that. So we try to conserve as much as possible wood. So even here, in fact, the hive that we have introduced some years ago with a lot of calculation and downsizing the measurements, but keeping the biological requirements intact, we were able to really get the hive down to half its former weight, which was made with thick wood and all that, but it is all that necessary. But all these are explained in that book. So I request all of you download it free of charge and get the book. And well, this is I just want to show you how we preserve the wood, and these are the important things. We never used we used to use what do you call a frame for the brood box. We don't use it anymore because I must give the credit to Dr. Eva Crane, who attended that late Dr. Eva Crane, was a great woman, a British woman, and she did a thankless, very good service to popularize beekeeping, and you know, she ran her own institute, and of course later it was taken over, but since of her death, of course, she lived to a very long age, very senior age. So Mrs. Crane pointed out, hey Punchi, why are you using a frame? Your bees are not attaching attaching the combs to very well, they only use the top bar. And why not use the top bar? And that was the greatest idea because she has so much experience. And so since that advice, as far back in 1987, I did the experiments with the top bar. And in this picture, what is in the bottom is the top bar. Of course, I have improved the top bar. I have a comb guide or a very fine glue. Of course, I do. I use very simple but very exact machines, and so you can get a thing. And many of it, some of it, I mean, so the hive that I'm showing in the book also further improved, and improved to save the costs and save the wood. That's the main idea. And of course, when it comes to super, you have a perfect, good frame and very strong. Though this looks rather flimsy and it is quite strong, and it can, yes, this is how a comb in reality stands on the top bar. Another top bar is compared onto the right on a graph paper just to get a measurement of it. But all these measurements, or in future, you can contact me and I can discuss these problems. And also when it comes to the super, so these how the super frame is filled with a dark comb. Yeah, I'll get to that point. Dark comb is a now see, this is the end comb of a brood box. Usually at this time, if you manage your combs right, the ends will have only food combs. Now this has some pollen here, and the rest is honey. There's no brood, and you take this kind of a comb, and also bottom part, the bees have already started what you call shaving off, or you know, cutting it down, or just nibbling on it, so the comb becomes thinner because they want to get more space. Or once it's thin, they might rebuild it on new combs because the queen needs space to lay. So one has to keep in mind, you know, regular refreshing the combs in the brood box is a good management thing. This is how it is done. You simply take the top board or the crown board and cut one of these large combs that are coming out of the brood box. The ends have no brood, so you can easily cut and put in the super. Once it's put in the super, the bees will chew up all the, I mean, use all the honey. I mean, nothing is wasted. And also the concept of comb foundation may not work very well in Asia, or at least in Sri Lanka. We don't have, you know, beekeepers don't have the time and bother about, you know, placing foundations like in the West. The West is a different thing. Now, please, I'm asking you again, sorry to tell you, don't copy Western ideas. No, Western concepts are correct, perfectly correct. I mean, these are all Western concepts, but I don't use the Western technology just the way it is done in our similar species, the Apis mellifera in Europe or America. That's a different ball game altogether. And I emphasize the fact, all this what I'm discussing is for the humid tropical Asiatic region, the monsoonal Asiatic region. That's what the very first page of my book says, the monsoonal tropical environment. And so we don't have to really waste money, because one thing, as you know, all the countries I've traveled to from Sri Lanka right down up to Philippines, and I've lived in several places. I've lived with the beekeepers, associated them. I learn a lot from them. I'll tell you that much. I learn a lot from all the beekeepers of Asia. I got ideas, discuss with them. Maybe we don't talk the same language, no English at all, but still we were talking to each other. We were exchanging ideas. That was great. I'm quite old, as you see in my picture, but I still like to travel and meet them. And that was really, I thank who are here, who arrange my trips into those countries. Truly, truly a university. All this, I would say illiterate in our terms, but they have taught me a lot. So anyway, we don't have to go by any other Western technologies. We know the concepts. I mean, just take any other physical sciences. I mean, we use Archimedean principle, but Archimedes lived many years ago in a different country, but we apply that for different reasons. I mean, just to give us a simple example. So, well, then I'm going back about 5 slides back. The drone flight time, that's the time that one has to be very careful, because this time one can miss by a few days, and then your whole program might come to a really not a very productive end. Now, this young beekeeper, well, not young, he must be not young, but maybe not as old as me, but quite a nice beekeeper. He found drones during one of his afternoon or evening high examinations. So immediately what he did was, next morning when the drones are not flying, he's examining the brood combs with a mirror. You don't have to, only thing is you have to have special contraption, this hollow box, which we call the mirror box. You can insert a mirror, examine the ends of the brood combs. Now, that's one of the advantage that we have in managing cerana without the frame. If you have a frame, everything gets covered, and we have no way of knowing what's going inside the brood comb, which is very important. So he's examining the combs, and then he finds, wow, queen cells. Now here there's a queen cell, there's a queen cell, and you can already see a larvae. Now this is a very critical time. One has to be very watchful just to get the right day they may swarm. So one is waiting until one queen cell is sealed. At that point, you simply divide the colony, and division method also very well given in that book. I'm not going to explain for the sake of saving time. You can divide. This is the mother colony. This is the colony with the old queen and with all the bees in the super. So there is no drop in honey production. These are the colonies with 2 frames of brood. Each will have a queen cell, at least 1 or 2 queen cells. And usually they produce about 15 queen cells. So you can very conveniently divide into small divisions. And these are also explained in that book. And of course, we have refined the technique. This book are written about 25 or more years ago. If you need any clarification, more details, I have a lot of details. Unfortunately, my website is in Sinhala, the national language of Sri Lanka, where majority of the people speak Sinhala. So, but I will be eventually building English translation side by side, because I know a lot of beekeepers outside Sri Lanka will like to know what I'm talking. But I will do it. But as you know, I have a problem with time. Anyway, also I have put a super. That is, feed the bees in case of a problem. The honey flows, honey flow might be stopped sporadically. So therefore, one has to be really watchful not to starve these colonies, or not especially these are mating colonies. That's with the old queen. It's not swarmed away with the prime swarm. So once one of these queens mate, one of the first queens to mate, we exchange with this one. So therefore, there is no breakdown of honey flow, and the beekeepers can benefit. Then he will have bees, he will have honey, he will have old queen and 2 more new colonies to sell off. And that's very simple, rather than grafting. Because I mean, grafting and all, they are good techniques, but ordinary beekeepers will not do it because they don't want to be bothered with. Keep that in mind. They don't want to be bothered with. And also, this new disease, which has come to the limelight for the last 10 years, a brood disease. In fact, I try to get the thing identified. I'm sure there's a viral disease, but as you know, I had to get this identified in a foreign country, which I don't have much funding for that. And as you know, a Western country will always need money to do this. So anyway, I have managed it. There's no problem. So it's a good thing I didn't have money. So I manage it properly. Or what you do is when you see this, one of the things is you can see the bees putting out the larvae outside the colony. Or that's something to be worried about. And you can see that when you periodically or every third or second day, just going through the entrance of your beehive, that take only a minute or two. So, but be watchful and just be aware of these facts what you're looking. Then when you look at look inside the colony, you can see the dying larvae. See, these are the dead bodies, mummies of the dead larvae, and practically there's no eggs. The shining things are not eggs. Be careful. So, and so that means the brood disease has come, and they are only waiting the brood to hatch out, or if they're in a real hurry to go, all what they do is they pull out all the brood away, and which is a normal thing they do. They even as you know, even the other animals, they never keep their dead brood with them. They throw it away. So one of the things you can do is use this kind of a simple cage. You can embed onto the comb, and there are bee escapes on which are only permissible for the workers to go in. You catch the queen, and it's all well written here, so that the queen is prevented from laying. She lays inside. It doesn't matter, but they never raise the brood until the other areas of the colony get cleared. Otherwise, the bees will abscond. And here you do a regular feeding so that the bees will not starve, but you keep the colony, the queen, confined to a comb, so the hive will stay intact. So thereby you are not losing a colony. But sometimes the brood disease is very severe. I just allow them to go away because I do very simple selection process. So I would rather not ask anybody, what shall I do? Okay, put chemicals or whatever. No, that's nonsense, because that will make beekeeping all that expensive. It's not worth. As you know, just now there's a huge campaign against the use of various pesticides, which is very well justified. So you don't have to use any chemicals. Or I know in Western countries, for varroa and various things they use it. Varroa is one of our common things in our hives. It's not a disease for Asian bees, and our bees know how to handle varroa because we have a very effective grooming behavior, which I'm not discussing here because I want to cut down on my time. So I go back to observing the entrance, the slide I showed you at the beginning, the estimation of CPI, which is important, and then the problem of the short flight range. Therefore, you have to be very careful. The bees will get into a kind of a starving or unfold stage, which you have to supplement with supplementary feeding or change the position of the queen. Position of the hive. As you know, in our villages, if there's flowering in one corner of the village, and other corner may be dirt because they have a short flight range, the bees in one corner of the village may not know what's happening in the other corner. So it's much better the beekeeper keeps a watch on the bee plant of your area, building the bee plant calendars for every country, which is very important. The bee calendar, so that you can keep moving your hives, at least know the rough time, because the flowering of the plant may not happen in just on a certain day. There's a period, depending on the rain, especially, and rain is something that our countries are blessed with. So depending on the rain and the no rain thing, it comes. So you have to change your hives. So this is hornet and even weavant and knot control, which are the natural things I have discussed very well in the book. If you place the hive in such a way that it's not attractive to hornets, especially if you place some kind of a foliage in front of your hive entrance, the hornets can't come. And the weavants, the Ukephila, they only attack the hives if they're kept in a very clean area. So it's much better your hive stays in a patch of grass. The weavants never come through the grass from the ground. They only come through very cleaner areas. I don't know why they behave here, but we have used it Wax moth, again, very easy to control. The bees themselves will control. You only have to feed, which are discussed very well in the book. I don't want to take time for that. And the only thing which is new, not in the book, is this new brood disease, which I think I discussed very well. So thank you very much, and for your attention. I hope my short and quick presentation was somehow helpful to our Asian beekeepers. But many of the beekeeping people in your countries are somehow known to me, or at least we have met. I think many of it we have met sometime or the other, which I'm very happy, but not at present times of this kind of crisis time. So I have given all my contacts to Chrissy, who organized this, and some of the other people, such as Eric, and all these people know me personally, and we talk to each other whenever it's necessary. So I am not all that unknown. Please keep in touch with me, and we'll discuss the problem. I'll be happy to share with it, and also now with new technology, like I'm very thankful to digital technology, which talking to somebody in our region or anywhere in the world is practically no money. It costs no money. Well, thank you again, and I wish everyone good luck with your beekeeping, and also good health at the present crisis times, the universal crisis time. All right, thank you very much.